Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Wyatt Claypool Show, where we try and have a little bit of fun with the decline of the country. And today, because it's a day ending in Y, there are more clips of Justin Trudeau making a complete fool of himself at another press event. Even with the clips that Justin Trudeau and his team uploads to their own social media accounts, it doesn't look good, but this one is especially embarrassing. A legacy media journalist, usually in the tank for Justin Trudeau, asked him effectively why he's not going to resign as prime minister, despite the fact that all the polls are showing that he's anywhere from 18 to 21 points behind the Conservative Party. The legacy media would love to be doing propaganda for Justin Trudeau, but even they have to ask these questions to make the audience seem to think that they have at least a little bit of integrity. So it has resulted in this clip where Justin Trudeau just dodges like he's in the Matrix, trying to get away from the fact that he is the most unpopular prime minister we've had in probably 50 years. Check this out.
Hi, Laura Stone, Globe and Mail. Prime Minister, I want to ask you about leadership. Polls have put you 20 points behind the Conservatives, and it doesn't seem to be getting better despite your recent communications push from your budget. The public appears to have an overwhelmingly negative view of you personally, and you seem to have lost control of the conversation on some of the key issues that Canadians care about. I think the public might be looking at you and your position right now and thinking, for the good of the Liberal Party, why is he staying on?
And before he answers, I just quickly want to just bring up the fact that look at Doug Ford standing there, looking like an absolute putz. I don't know what's wrong with Doug Ford and his PC government. They keep stapling themselves to the Liberals. Doug Ford is not very conservative, and so he keeps going in on all these stupid EV subsidy projects that Justin Trudeau is also funding, creating what I would define as fake jobs, using taxpayer dollars to try and coax a company into starting a EV manufacturing plant or battery manufacturing plant in Ontario, when in the normal market they would never set up in Canada because the regulations and taxes are terrible. So we basically have to pay them to overlook all that to set up shop here. So guys, if you live in Ontario, please vote for the New Blue Party to try and force Doug Ford to be somewhat conservative again. I don't get this guy, but here's Justin Trudeau trying to dodge this question like he's in the Matrix.
Thank you for your concern, Laura. But as you see, we're here investing in good jobs for today and for generations to come. The world is in a challenging place. Absolutely.
No. Canada is in a challenging place. I hate this idea that every time there's a problem in Canada, it's a world problem. Every time something good happens in Canada, which basically never happens anymore, it's suddenly all Trudeau. Like a criminal could be stopped by the police, and it's probably somehow has to do with Trudeau in his own mind, that he's the one who stops all crime. If any project gets built, if any job gets created, it's all about Justin Trudeau, even though all these jobs are either fake jobs or it's just purely from the private sector slowly eking out some sort of increased productivity despite all of the taxes, all the regulations that Justin Trudeau and his Liberal government are trying to crush them with. So this is not playing well already, but he's going to just start talking about how everything's actually fantastic, and that, do you want to be gaslighted right now? Because I'm willing to gaslight you into thinking that everything's great.
But that's why for 8 years, this government has been putting forward investments and a frame that both fights climate change and creates good jobs and economic growth, that understands that if you want to bring in strong investments and great jobs for Canadians, you have to be making investments in things like childcare, like pharmacare, like healthcare.
We can't call these aren't investments. They're subsidies. Can we use accurate language? Like it's his free speech. He's allowed to lie if he wants. But goodness, it's not an investment to just pour taxpayer dollars into bloated government programs or giving it to private businesses like Honda or Hyundai in order to start up EV factories. That's not an investment because there's no return for Canada. We are literally taking the money that taxpayers gave us to give it to a company who are then going to get tax breaks because they manufacture EVs, in which is going to be a net negative loss for Canada, because we could have had jobs that actually made real money, made real productive products that people want to buy, not EVs who not only do you have to subsidize the company making them, but you have to subsidize the people buying them with big tax credits. I think you get like a $10,000 tax credit if you purchase a Tesla, which means that people don't want to purchase the Teslas without the tax credit. It means people don't want these items, but Trudeau is trying to artificially incentivize their creation to just pretend like everything's getting better.
Investments in supporting our seniors, investments to make sure that young people get the best opportunity as they go off to post-secondary education. I know there are lots of folks in Ottawa thinking about process. I'm focused on results for Canadians. I'm focused on delivering the kinds of things that are going to set Canada and Canadians up for success.
Food bank uses up. Bankruptcies are up. What is he talking about? Housing prices just went up, and we'll talk about this a bit later. Rent costs and housing prices have gone up through the roof. Rent prices from last year to now are up 10%. 10%. That's insane, considering someone's rent is usually over a couple $1,000s. So that's people having to pay $200 more from last year to this year per month. And he thinks that somehow these investments are going to help it. Like, people don't eat in the long run, and he's acting like all of these are great long-term investments that are going to make us super prosperous. People go bankrupt in the short run in this economy. People aren't going to wait until his government subsidies get to them next. And even that doesn't really work, because it's all fake funny money at this point.
Over the coming decades, because that's the moment we're in right now. A different government years ago wouldn't have made the choice to build an EV ecosystem here in Canada.
Yeah, they would have made a good choice instead of subsidizing EV factories.
Would have doubled down on the oil and gas industry.
Oh, something that works? Heaven forbid that we do something that works. It wouldn't be like enough. It wouldn't be climate action if we did something that works, because it's good for people to like go get cold in the winter and have to pay way more money for their overly expensive green energy on the power grid in order for us to feel a little bit better than ourselves. Like, whenever he goes after rich people and says that they're not paying their fair share, it's so hypocritical, because he's already made his money through inheritance and investments, and now he's going to try and tax richer people more, as if they're the people who are making people actually suffer through this terrible economy. It's him. It's not. Rich people haven't stolen a single dollar from the Canadian taxpayers. Like, I know there are some, in a certain sense, these subsidies are, in my opinion, theft, but it's the government giving them out.
And stayed away from anything that threatened the oil and gas industry. Well, we know that the pressure we're putting on the oil and gas industry to decarbonize and to invest in renewables goes hand in hand with our decision to invest massively in the electrification of our economies. Because we have the clean electricity here in Canada, we have the high quality manufacturing.
The problem is it's not a product that can be sold. Here's the problem with EVs and green energy and batteries and all this stuff. It's a circular economy. It's not a physical product that we can then use for other things. It's purely just a resource that you need in order to operate other things. It's like whenever I see people in Alberta, from the Alberta NDP, saying, well, we don't need the oil and gas industry. We should be investing more in the, like, they'll say something like the education industry, or we should be investing more in the healthcare industry. Those aren't industries. Those are just basic services. You cannot base an economy off of basic services. And him talking about the electrification of our economy, that means nothing. All that means is that we're going to make people use electricity as their base energy unit for their cars and their homes and their heat pumps and whatnot. That is not actually a resource that creates productivity. At the end of the day, an economy can't just be services. It can't be services all the way down and government subsidies all the way down. Eventually, you have to be pulling something out of the ground or manufacturing something for a real economy. Manufacturing something that the government didn't pay to have manufactured. That's a fake job. You need agricultural resources, you need mining, you need energy, you need manufacturing. And we are having the mining industries, the energy industries, and the manufacturing industries contract heavily. The April jobs report shows that all of the gains are being made in part-time jobs because people need multiple jobs right now, and it's being made in government jobs, jobs where we're pushing paperwork around and people are being paid to do jobs that nobody asked them to do and nobody wanted them to do. But sorry, I'll let Mr. Trudeau close this one out.
Workers, we have the social and economic stability that countries around the world and companies around the world are looking for. This is about building a plan for the future of this country. That's what we're focused on, and that's what I will continue to be focused on, because building a better future for Canadians, bringing in fairness for every generation, that's what I am 100% focused on right now.
Well, you're bad at it, man. Oh, goodness. And there's not really going to be a country if he stays as the prime minister after the next election. I don't think he can win the next election, which is great, but him pretending like I'm making long-term investments. When do the long-term investments actually come back and give us some profit here? Because you've been making these long-term investments for 8 years, and they actually haven't come back to our benefit. Because supposedly we were supposed to be so wealthy and creating so much new revenues through more productivity in the country that the budget was going to balance itself. That the investments that the government was making through subsidies, through business, like big business handouts and whatnot, were going to grow the economy, and then we were going to be able to pay off the deficit, the debt, because he's just created so much economic activity that our standard tax rates, without raising taxes, we're going to pay for everything because of all the people moving into Canada. It hasn't worked, and that's in spite of the mass immigration that Justin Trudeau has been pursuing. That's really been Justin Trudeau's plan, is in order to grow the GDP, he's been just importing people, where the productive capacity of each person coming into the country is becoming less and less and less, to the point where a lot of people are just drags on the economy. No insult to them. It's just that they're either older adults who can't even work, but they're immigrating to this country, or they're people who can't find jobs, and they're just competing for minimum wage jobs with Canadian citizens and other permanent residents. And this is where Pure Polyev had this great post today, where he posted this: "Hurrah! He hiked your rent another 10% this year. Another round of applause, everyone." And it's a graphic that says rent in Canada rises nearly 10% in 1 year. And since I'm running for the Calgary Signal Hill Conservative Party nomination, if you're a Conservative Party member in this riding, please vote for me number 1 on your ballot. I've talked to a lot of people who live next to houses who they have foreign owners of that house. The person is either just a permanent resident living in the country who owns multiple properties, or they actually live overseas, and they are renting out each room in that house at $500 a room. It's illegal to do, but even the local authorities in Calgary know that we have such a shortage of housing. They're unwilling to actually crack down on this illegal housing situation that's going on right now. And so what we have is just basically slumlords who aren't just gouging people for the house or the apartment they live in. They are gouging them for the basement bedroom. They are paying $600 a month to have a basement bedroom in a house with 8 other people living there. That's not a thing we can build our way out of. When there are 8 people sometimes to a single house, even if we doubled or tripled house building, we would still be behind the ball, and we would not be decreasing housing prices. We would just merely be keeping them stable. This is why immigration needs to be cut down. It's not anyone saying, oh, I don't want new people in the country. It's math saying that we can't have new people in the country right now. Ooh, look, I'm shaking the table a little bit. But yeah, it's nobody trying to be rude. When I door knock and I talk to new Canadians, even permanent residents, not even citizens yet, they think immigration needs to be cut down by like 2/3 in order to get control of the situation right now. Especially in my area, where there's a lot of people with oil and gas job experience who move to Canada for oil and gas jobs. They get a little bit frustrated that there's so many people in line for all these immigration services that do not have jobs, do not have any skills, and are bringing along their extended families who aren't working. And they find this annoying because they actually had skills. They had the means to move here. Yet their home prices are going up because all these other people are showing up and sort of delving into the housing market and renting half a basement apartment. But that means that since there's so many people, these people who normally could live here comfortably are having to scratch and crawl to be able to rent the home that they live in, like any normal middle-class family would be expecting to have when they have very good oil and gas engineering jobs. So these people have utterly destroyed our economy. The Liberals, yeah, there's not much we can say about that. But in some great news, I want to give Arnold Viersen, the MP for Peace River Westlock, a lot of credit because he found out a new scandal from the Liberal government. So the Liberals, I want to try to find his posting of this. So the Liberals, apparently from an access to information request that Mr. Viersen had made, found out that the Liberals had not asked for legal advice on their use of the Emergencies Act until the day after they used the Emergencies Act. So right here, I'll bring it up on screen so you can see it a little bit better. So Arnold Viersen shows this sequence of events. February 14th, 2022, Trudeau enacts Emergencies Act. February 15th, 2022, receives legal advice from prosecutors. January 23rd, 2024, Emergencies Act declared unlawful. So yeah, the Liberals were not actually being careful about their use of the Emergencies Act. So when Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland, and I think then the Minister of Justice David Lametti came out and they said, we're making this after careful consultation with legal experts, with prosecutors, they were lying through their teeth. They just did what they wanted to, and then they filled in the gaps later by asking prosecutors for their advice. Prosecutors who themselves said that this is probably a bad idea. That's why the judge struck it down, because the Liberals had no reason to think that the Emergencies Act was needed. It used to be called the War Measures Act. It was for when terrorists were going around kidnapping politicians and murdering them. This was people like blowing up bouncy castles next to Ottawa and having little sausage cookouts was not a requirement for the police and horses to move into town and the reserves to get people out of Ottawa. The people in Ottawa, were they technically occupying those streets illegally? Yes, they were doing that knowingly, because they had a problem with the illegal things the federal government were doing. They were even willing to pay the fines every single day to be able to camp out on Wellington Street, knowing that there wasn't even anyone really allowed to move around town at this point, so they weren't blocking anyone. It was a complete ghost town in Ottawa at the time. And so they were willing to pay the fines, but Trudeau didn't like the optics of the truckers being outside of Parliament, so he needed them gone. Yes, polling at the time showed that supposedly the Freedom Convoy was not popular, but most people apathetically will just say, I guess I don't like that. But the people who cared about the lockdowns really liked the Freedom Convoy. The amount of people who had a deep-seated hatred for the Freedom Convoy was the tiny fringe minority in the country who thought that the lockdowns were just fine. Most people, when you actually poll them now, it's like 50-50 on whether or not they supported the Freedom Convoy. So yeah, things are not going well for Trudeau, and this should be a massive scandal that he just lied to the country, pretending like he was being careful in the implementation of emergency powers when he wasn't being careful in any way at all. Now, I know I talked about this in my last episode. I don't want to belabor it too much, but the left these days is absolutely insane on the topic of abortion. It's not just that they have a different perspective than conservatives, they have a deeply immoral perspective. So Leah Proud-Lakota, and I believe an NDP MP, she posted this: reproductive rights are under attack. While conservatives vote against contraceptives and push legislation and petitions to violate abortion rights, liberals fail to uphold access. When will the government enforce the Canada Health Act and protect their right to safe abortion? Now, what they're saying is that conservatives had voted against access to abortion because they voted in favor of making a criminal act to assault a pregnant mother and cause her to miscarry, cause the child to die. They wanted that to result in upgraded sentences for criminals who did that. The liberals this isn't just pro-choice. They are just deeply pro the act of abortion, to the point where they protected criminals for assaulting pregnant mothers and forcing them to miscarry. That was something that they thought was a key thing to protect abortion rights in Canada, was to make it easier to get away with killing an unborn child that the mother did not want to get rid of. That's insane. So I said here, and I think it's an apt thing to say, I said the Liberals and NDP literally voted against enhanced punishments for criminals who assault pregnant women and harm the child. These people have a sick perspective and yet try and attack others for apparently not being on their moral level. And yet I still had leftists on social media say, well, the wording of that piece of legislation that came from the conservatives was meant to attack abortion because it called the fetus a child. It is a child. What are you talking about? If you wait long enough, it's a child. Obviously, it's a child. And so this is where the liberals are going to fall on their face on the issue of like pro-life stuff because they are so out of touch with the average middle class Canadian's perspective on the issue that they're going to make, rightfully so, way more Canadians pro-life. Because when they hear that the NDP and the Liberals are so crazy on this issue, they think it's no big deal to assault a predator, and that should just be basic assault. No extra charges, no extra slap on the wrist. It's okay. That is going to make a lot of people say, maybe these people might have a bit of a sickness in their heads if they think that that is a morally acceptable thing to do, or at least it doesn't require more of a condemnation from the court system. This is where, as much as they try and attack Arnold Viersen for saying that we need more protections for unborn Canadians, they are going to get hurt on this issue, and I think they deserve it. And conservatives should not walk away from this. You don't have to become the biggest pro-lifer on the planet tomorrow, but what you should do is you shouldn't just get your back up against the wall and get scared of talking about this. You should go after them. They have the crazy perspective on MAID. They have the crazy perspective on drugs. They have the crazy perspective on gender theory. They have the crazy perspective on the pro-life issues. They're the ones who are just blatantly pro-abortion. They are not safe, legal, and rare. They are do it more as much as possible, despite the fact that they say we need more immigration because we don't have a high, like our population is shrinking. Well, maybe you guys shouldn't be as crazy on this issue and keep attacking families and implying that families are a threat to the climate, as they keep doing. These people are just absolutely pickled in the brain. Ugh. Anyways, I think I have a few other things I wanted to talk about here. It's been an intense day, I gotta say. So maybe I'll end off with this. I'll just pull it up on screen here. It's not something that really needs to be on screen, but it's great to see in British Columbia, the BC Conservatives are surging even on the online polls. So right now, the latest poll from Abacus Data shows it's the BC NDP at 40%, BC Conservatives at 34%, United 13%, and the BC Greens at 10%. You don't need to see that anymore on screen. But for the longest time, a lot of people have been saying, well, yeah, the BC Conservatives are doing well, but it's only in IVR polls. An IVR poll is whenever, if you've ever been polled in your life, a lot of you probably haven't been because pollsters tend to get a good sampling of 10,000 people and they kind of keep polling those people over and over again because they learn that they pick up the phone pretty easily. So these pollsters who do IVR polls, what it is when you pick up the phone, you'll hear a robotic voice saying that in this race, there are these parties running. Who do you like? And then in randomized order, in every call is randomized to keep it fair. It'll be press 1 if you like this party, press 3 if you like this party, press 5 if you like this party, press 6 if you like this party. And they'll kind of keep going. And they usually keep gaps between the numbers so you don't accidentally hit the wrong number. So that's an IVR poll. Generally speaking, IVR polls tend to be more sensitive to those who are very willing to take calls. Because most people, when they pick up the phone and hear a robotic voice, they're like, scam. And then they just click down. So you get the very dedicated voters who answer those. So that was maybe skewing a little bit more BC Conservatives than BC NDP. But now this Abacus data poll is a online poll, which tends to be a little bit more accurate in theory into who the people are going to be voting for. Although Main Street does IVR and they have a very good reputation for IVR. IVR, you just need better sampling and methodology to make sure that you don't oversample certain areas. If you do it well, it can be some of the most accurate polls, but other companies who aren't careful can do very bad IVR polls. Just be careful with those. But Abacus, back, I believe, in November when they did their last poll, it was the NDP who was ahead by 14 points. Now they're only ahead by 6. And when you actually dig a little bit deeper into these polling results, the BC Conservatives are leading with young BC residents, not just 18 to 24 or 18 to 28. They are leading with people who are 29 to 40. That is very good. So it's a big divide between the BC Conservatives with young voters and the NDP with older voters. And it's not because older voters like the BC NDP. It's just that younger people in that 18 to 40, 45 demographic are much more online. So they see the sort of up-to-date, day-by-day kind of political developments. Older voters, as you get closer to the election and they start paying more attention to the election, they are going to shift hard. Because when you look at the issues that are leading this election, it tends to be issues where older BC residents really want change made. Drugs, they want to get rid of SOGI, they want taxes lower, they want crime cracked down on. So really, this just shows that the BC Conservatives have the momentum, and they just need to get to more doors to talk to older voters who are not perpetually online like young people like myself are. I am always on Twitter. I'm always online, where if you're in your early 70s, you probably don't stick around on Twitter all day long. So if the BC Conservatives can do that, I guarantee they can flip this result. They can be way ahead of the BC NDP. And another good result that came from this Abacus poll was that it's not just that the BC Conservatives are ripping away all the Conservative federal votes from the BC United, who are the kind of the in-between party between the Conservatives and the NDP. The BC Conservatives gained 4 points from the BC United, and they gained 4 points from the BC NDP. So it's that pretty much everyone is sick of both Kevin Falcon as well as BC Premier David Eby. That's very good to see. So if you live in British Columbia, please donate $100 to the BC Conservatives. Don't even donate to me. I know I have a fundraiser for my legal funds in the description below. If you don't live in BC, consider donating to that. It always helps me out. But if you live in British Columbia, I believe you get 75% of your money back in a tax credit up to $100. Everybody who watches this show who lives in BC, if you give $100, the BC Conservatives will flat out win. They just need enough money for phone calling, robocalling, emailing, paying volunteers, making sure they can afford offices in every riding. That's all they need. They have the right policies. They have the brand recognition. They just simply need money to outpace the United and the NDP so that they can appear to be the biggest kids on the block. Because right now, the only thing that the BC Conservatives lack is cash, because a year and a half ago, they weren't even a real party, technically. They were just a name that some people had been keeping alive since after social credit fell apart, everyone went liberal, so the Conservatives didn't really ever gain traction. They have traction now. They just don't have the reserved war chest that the NDP and the United have. So that's my call to you guys. I will have the donation link for the BC Conservatives in the description of this video. Please donate to them. You get a big tax receipt. Make sure that you actually fund them, because if you don't fund them, don't expect that other people are funding them either. That's a big problem in politics. If you genuinely don't have the money, I get it. I've donated, even when I was broke, $1,500 to leadership campaigns for other people because I wanted them to do well. Even if they didn't win, I wanted them to demonstrate that these values are popular and that they're gaining traction. But the problem in Canada is there's always an action problem in our politics, is that our politics are very sluggish. There's not a lot of spending on them, so people kind of get out of touch. There's very few people who are party members in this country, both federal and provincially, and there's very few people who really research who they're voting for. And so in order to get more information out, we need more spending, and that requires more people to donate. And it's not always going to be somebody else who's going to donate for you. Sometimes you got to be the one who donates. You got to be the one who gets involved. I've talked to people who they're like, a $15 membership to vote for you in the federal nomination. I usually get them on board. You just got to crack through the apathy barrier. But people are like, $15? I don't want to pay $15. Like, well, if you don't pay $15, you might end up with an MP who doesn't really represent your values, doesn't push for the right things, and doesn't lower your taxes. It's the best investment you're ever going to make to pay $100 in BC for the BC Conservatives to get a 75% tax credit back. It's only $25. And then you also, on top of paying that, you get to make sure that your taxes go down if the BC Conservatives win a majority. Your taxes are going to go down by thousands. Housing prices are going to go down by thousands. And it only costs you $25 if everyone else does it. And I guarantee a lot of people will do it if you do it too. Sorry, that's my pitch for why people should be donating more. I don't even live in British Columbia. I could just say, saw British Columbia off of Canada and push them out to sea, because I don't have to technically deal with it. But BC has become the meth lab of bad policies in the country. It's not because you guys voted for it. It's because the NDP and the Liberals were the only games in town, and they were both serving the exact same garbage, saying that they are going to get control of the drug issue. They're going to get in control of the crime issue. And all of their getting control of it policies are basically enabling the problem. They're just making the problem worse by giving out more drugs, by adding safe supply in, by having DEI-based policing that ends up just allowing certain people to get away with crimes because, well, we arrested too many people from X demographic, which is easily the most racist thing I've ever heard in my life, acting like people from a certain community should have to live around a certain amount of criminals, because if we arrested those criminals, it would be disproportionate to the population. When I think that the small business owners in those communities would like their shop windows to not be smashed because they don't care who the criminal is. They don't want the criminal to be attacking them. Ugh. Anyways, that should be it for me today, guys. I have the Telegram link for TNT's Telegram in the description below. Click on that if you want to join to get all of our posts in order so you never miss one of our videos. And also, you can donate to the TNT Legal Fund in the description below. It is the Give, Send, Go link. Really helps us out if you do that. And then also, of course, if you live in Calgary, Signal Hill, on the west side of Signal Hill, west side of Calgary, I mean, and you're a Conservative Party member, vote for me number 1 on your ballot so we can actually have a real Conservative who will do things like reduce immigration, reduce taxes, and get wokeism out of the government. Have a great day, everyone. I'm out.